screen the PowerPoint presentation stability analysis using root locus. So in our previous lectures, we have talked about what root locus is and how to construct a root locus from a given open loop transfer function. Remember, when we are talking about root locus, the problem prescribes open loop transfer function whose all poles and zeros are specified clearly. However, for stability of the closed loop control system, we need poles of the closed loop transfer function which are not available because of the parameter k. For example, if let's take this example now. Okay, this is an example. GSHS is given to us, right? GSHS is what? It is the this is called open loop transfer function, or in short OLTF. This is how it is abbreviated. Okay, so what we have is an open loop transfer function with us, and from the open loop transfer function we are trying to see what the closed loop transfer function, what the closed loop poles would be. Directly we cannot find out all the poles because of this factor k, right? When we go for closed loop transfer function, it is what? GS upon 1 plus GSHS, right? Am I right here? The closed loop transfer function is 1 plus GSHS, and as you can see, GSHS has this term k, means the denominator is going to have term k, means the poles are going to depend on k, and that's why we cannot have a single value for each pole. We cannot have distinct or we cannot directly calculate the pole values, and that's why what we are doing is we are changing or we are varying k from 0 to infinity, and we are plotting the locus of each pole. Since there are 3 poles, we are plotting the locus of each of the 3 poles, and that is what root locus is. So now we are going to solve this problem one step at a time, okay, by following all the steps that we have seen in our earlier lecture. Okay, so the first step is to locate all the open loop poles and zeros in the S-plane. Remember, we are talking about open loop poles and zeros. We are starting with open loop poles and zeros. So this is the function GSHS equal to k upon S, S plus 1, S plus 2. And for this function, we are going to plot what are the poles. So poles are S equal to 0, S equal to -1, and S equal to -2, right? So here are these 3 poles, S equal to 0, S equal to -1, and S equal to -2. All these 3 poles are on the real axis. These are real poles, right? Real axis poles. Okay, so we have these 3 poles, we have plotted them, and this is the step 1. Now what is the step 2? Can someone remind me? Can someone tell me what is the step 2?
Determine the root locus.
To determine the root locus on the real axis.
Real axis.
That is called real axis locus. Okay, and what is the rule for that? The actual theoretical rule or analytical rule is to apply angle condition, but instead of that we are going to follow a simple rule just to find out how many poles and zeros are on the right hand side of any point. So here all these points between the root 0 and root -1, this section, if you take any point in between, if you take this point, so how many poles are on the right hand side? Only 1. Now if this number is odd, then that point is on the root locus. So based on this analysis, this whole section between S equal to 0 and S equal to -1 is the real axis locus. The section between -1 and -2 is not on the root locus, because if you take any point in between here, this one, this one, this one, whatever point you take, how many roots are on the right hand side? 2. So if there are 2 roots on the right hand side, it means what? This number is even. We need odd number of roots on the right hand side, and that's why this section is not on the root locus. The section after -2 towards -infinity, all this section is on the root locus, because you take any point on this, any point from -infinity to -2, there are 3 poles on the right hand side of that point, and therefore this is the odd number, so this is on the root locus. Okay, so this is how we get the this is how we plot the real axis root locus. Remember, when we are plotting the real axis root locus, we consider only the roots, means only the poles and zeros on the real axis. If there are some poles and zeros into the imaginary plane, into the complex plane, let's say somewhere here or somewhere here like this, or even maybe possible that it is like this. Okay, so even if it is like this, we do not interfere, or we do not take these into consideration while calculating the real axis locus. Okay, these are not considered for calculating the real axis locus. When we are talking about real axis locus, and when we count their number, even or odd, that we talk about only the real axis poles and zeros. Okay, so the next rule is now what? To determine the asymptotes, means the angle of asymptotes. So the formula that we have seen for this angle of asymptotes is plus minus 180 degree into 2k plus 1 divided by n minus m, and k varies from what? K varies from 0 to n minus m plus 1. This is the maximum value up to which you can take the value of k. It will not really make your calculations wrong even if you continue taking values of k further, but what will happen is you will get the repetitions of the same angles after this. Okay, so in this case, n is number of poles. So how many poles do we have? In here we have 3 poles and 0 zeros, right? So n minus m is 3, and this n minus m plus 1 is 2, right? 0, 1, 2, you can take their values. And but anyway, you will see that you start to get repetitions after that, even after that. Okay, so if we substitute these values, 180 2k, k is 0, so if you substitute 0 here, so it is 180 into 0 plus 1, so 1, so 180 divided by 3, right? You get this 180 divided by 3, and that value is 60. The sign is plus minus, means plus minus 60 degree, right? When k is equal to 1. When k is equal to 0. When you substitute k equal to 1, what you will get is, you can see here, k equal to 1, if you substitute, means 2k plus 1 is 3, this value comes here 3, and you will get 180 degree, plus minus 180 degree. Okay, now if you go ahead and take k is equal to 2, what value you are going to get? What value you are going to get? You just try and you will see that you will be getting the same values over and over again. Okay, this is 60, then this is minus 60, and this is 180. Even here, even though we are having, we can see there are 4 calculations, 4 values we have got, but actually there are only 3 distinct angles you can see, because one plus 180 and minus 180 is the same line, right? Plus 180 and minus 180 is the same line you have. Therefore, in fact, there are only 3 asymptotes, 3 distinct asymptotes having angle 60, minus 60 and 180. Now, a trick to remember in this case, okay? You can see the value of the pole does not play any role here. Value of zeros does not play any role here. What is it? That is dependent on the number of poles and number of zeros, n and m, right? Even the numerator is fixed. What is taken from the transfer function? Only n and m. So you can see if there is the difference between poles and zeros is 1, or if let's say if the number of poles and zeros is equal, so what will happen? There are no asymptotes. If the difference between poles and zeros is 1, there will be 1 asymptote. If there is 1 asymptote, what will be the value of that asymptote? If there is only 1 asymptote, what will be the value? Anyone? Let's say there is only 1 asymptote. Means what? N minus m, if n minus m is equal to 1. If n minus m is equal to 1, what will be the value of the angle? It will be 180, right? 180 degree. There will be only 1 asymptote. So can we create something like this? N minus 1 values, okay? 1, so angle will be 180 degree. If there are 2, the n minus 1 value is 2. What will be the values of the angles? 90 and 270. Am I right? Or in other way, you can write it as plus or minus 90. Okay. If the value is 3, what will you get? You will get the case like this, plus minus 60 and 180. Okay. If n minus 1 is 4, n minus m is 4, what will be the values? Somebody tell me quickly. It is basically what we are getting, 180 divided by n minus m. Yes? What actually is happening? What actually happening is the plane, S plane, is actually getting divided. When there were only 2, see, when there was 1 asymptote, it is 180 degrees, so horizontal line. When there are 2 asymptotes, there is a division like this, vertical. When there are 3, you are getting 3 equally spaced, right? The plane itself is getting divided into 3 parts. You can see this is 60 and this is 60, means this whole thing is 120, right? This is obviously 120 and this is obviously again 120, right? So 3 equal parts we are getting. So if there is 4, again we are going to get 4 equal 4 parts of the plane. And how will they be? They will be like sorry for my drawing the angle. The angles would be 45 and minus 45, right? So angle of asymptotes basically are they are going to be these values only. So you don't have to worry a lot about these, because if n minus from n minus m itself, you are getting the values of angle of asymptotes. One, if there is one only, if there is only one asymptote, it has to be 180. If there are two asymptotes, there will be plus minus 90. The point is, where do these asymptotes intersect the real axis, right? Where the angles, the asymptotes intersect with the real axis, and that point is called as centroid. And the formula for centroid is what we have seen is sigma is equal to summation of real parts of poles minus summation of real parts of zeros divided by n minus m. So if this is the transfer function, so what are the real parts of poles? Where are the poles? S equal to 0, S equal to -1, and S equal to -2, right? These are three open loop poles. So what are their real parts? Actually, all these are only real parts. There is no imaginary part to any of the poles. So if you take sum of all these, we get this sum of real parts of poles. As there are no zeros, sum of real parts of zeros is 0, and divided by n minus m, that is 3 minus 0. So when you calculate it, you get the value of centroid to be equal to -1. So what it indicates is, these are our calculations that we have found out. Angle of asymptotes are 60, -60, and 180 degrees. And sigma, the centroid, is -1. Means at this point, my sigma equal to -1, all the three asymptotes will meet. What it means that we have to draw the asymptotes from this point. This is plus 60, this is -60, and this is 180 degree. So this is how we have three asymptotes. Okay, we have got the three asymptotes intersecting from at sigma equal to -1. Okay, now what is the next step? Next step is to calculate the breakaway point. Now, why breakaway point is required? You can see we have got this. We have this, right? We know this is the real axis locus. Now, what is the rules? We have seen some of the rules, right? What are the rules? That the root locus branch starts from open loop pole and ends at open loop 0. Now, is there any zero here? No, there is no zero in this system, right? You can see there is no zero in the system. What it means that all these three branches are going to end at infinity. So this one branch going towards infinity already. So it is clear that this branch is going to end at -infinity only, clearly. What about these two? One branch is starting from this pole, another branch is starting from this pole. So where will they go? So they will have to go somewhere outside into the complex plane, and then they will go out towards infinity. But by which angle they will go? They will follow the angle of asymptotes for that, right? We have seen that one branch went like this, right? One branch went like this from the pole s equal to -2. So one asymptote is now occupied. Now there are two asymptotes, plus 60 and -60. So along these two directions, two branches will go. So we have seen that there is a real axis part between this s equal to 0 and s equal to -1. Means what? This is going to break from somewhere in between s equal to 0 and s equal to -1. This line will break somewhere and it will go towards this asymptote, right? So this logic you have to understand. Why breakaway point is required? Because there is real axis locus in between two there is a real axis locus in between two real poles. Okay, and that's why this real axis locus, there is a need of a breakaway point. Now, how to calculate that breakaway point? For that, we need dk by ds, and we have to equate it to 0. So for dk by ds, what we need to do is we have to find out first the characteristic equation equal to 0, right? 1 plus gshs equal to 0. We find out this, we solve this. Okay, so you can see k is k upon s plus 1 s plus 2 plus 1 equal to 0. So this term is equal to minus 1. So k is equal to minus of this whole term, right? So basically dk by ds, we are going to just differentiate this equation with respect to s. Are you getting this? This is the I would say most difficult part of the root locus calculations. Okay, this particular point, what we are talking about now, to calculate the breakaway points, this is what the actual the most difficult point is, just because of heavy calculations, nothing else. Okay, so what we should do, always remember, we first form the characteristic equation using the formula 1 plus gshs equal to 0. Then rearrange terms so that we get k on one side and other s terms on the other side, and then we differentiate that equation. So if we differentiate this equation, right, dk by ds, this we'll have to expand obviously first, s cube plus 3s square plus 2s, and if, when you take derivative of that, you get 3 minus 3, because of this minus, everything will be negative. 3 minus 3s square minus 6s minus 2, right? So we got dk by ds. Now we have to equate this to 0. And when we equate this to 0 and solve it, we get these two roots. You can check on your calculators. Is it correct? Are these roots correct? How to find out the roots? You can either use calculator or use the formula for roots of a quadratic equation, right? Which formula? Minus b plus minus square root b square minus 4ac upon 2a. That formula you can use. Okay, and after using this formula, we get these two roots. So how to decide which one is the breakaway point? Now again, logic will come into picture here. We have to see on the graph where these points are. So s equal to minus 0.4226 and s equal to minus 1.5774. So if you take a look at the graph, okay, if we take a look at this graph, where are the roots and where are the real axis poles, real axis locus, right? I'm drawing again the real axis locus like this, right? So this is actually the real axis locus. The 2 points are minus 0.4, minus 0.4226 and 1.5774. 0.4226 and minus 1.5774, right? These are the two roots or two values of s that we found by solving the equation dk by ds. Now, since it is a breakaway point, it has to be on the real axis locus. That is the first logical condition, that if it is a breakaway point, means what? Root locus is breaking, means it is part of root locus. That point has to be part of root locus. So which one of these is part of the root locus? Where is 0.4226? It is somewhere here. 0.4226 is somewhere here, and 1.577, it is somewhere here. So obviously this point cannot be a breakaway point because it is not on the root locus. means root locus is not meeting there, it is not breaking out into complex plane from that point. So the final answer for breakaway point is this, that minus 0.4226 is the breakaway point, right? So since the breakaway point must lie on real axis root locus, the actual breakaway point is s equal to minus 0.4226. Okay, so we got our breakaway point also. Now we have to find out the points where the root locus crosses the imaginary axis. Now, why is it required? I will again just try to quickly draw the diagram here, quickly draw the graph. Okay, we have three poles, right? This, and this. Okay, the root locus branches are, this was the one branch, and as it is going towards infinity already, so this is complete. But the other branch, there are two branches which I have started from these two poles, and just now we found out that they are breaking from this point, and the asymptotes are like this, right? The asymptotes are like this. Means what? The branch will start a break into complex plane from somewhere from here, and it will go along the asymptotes. The branches will go along the asymptotes like this. So obviously you can see the shape now. The branches are going to cross the real axis at some point. Oh, sorry, the imaginary axis. The branches are going to cross the imaginary axis at some point, and that point we have to now find out. Otherwise, this shape, I can take any shape, right? Of course, we cannot have a 100% accurate shape. All of you cannot draw the same shape all the time, but certain points have to be connected. So this is one of those, one such points. This is one such point, and this is one such point, which have to be calculated. And to find out that, as we have seen during the discussion of the steps of root locus calculation, we have seen that we need to apply the Routh-Hurwitz stability criterion. And from what does that Routh table comes? It comes from the characteristic equation. So this is the characteristic equation, right? S cube plus 3s square plus 2s plus k equal to 0. Where did this come from? Just a while ago we have seen, we have calculated that here. You can see here also, s cube plus 3s square plus 2s plus k, right? Here you can see here, s cube plus 3s square plus 2s plus k equal to 0. That was the characteristic equation. It is actually coming from here itself. Okay, so from this characteristic equation we have to create the Routh's array or Routh table. So how will that be? It will be, if you have s cube, s squared, then you take terms 1, 2, 3, k, right? So using these terms, you start solving, and then the next term is, how does it come? You take 1, 3, 1, 3, 2, k, negative of this determinant divided by what? Divided by 3. So if you solve this determinant, you get this value, and similarly you get k here. So what is the procedure for finding out the intersection point? We have to make a row of zeros. So that row of zeros will come where? Here that row of zeros can come, right? If we make this term, as 0, now how will this term become 0? When will this term become 0? See, when this term will become 0, it is when k is equal to 6, right? When k becomes 6, this term will become 0, right? And using this value of k, we create the auxiliary polynomial from the row above the row of zeros. So what is the auxiliary polynomial? 3s squared plus 6, right? The auxiliary polynomial is 3s squared plus 3s squared plus k is equal to 6. So 3s squared plus 6 equal to 0 is the auxiliary polynomial. And when we solve this, we get the values of s is equal to plus or minus j root 2. Okay. What does it mean? You can see s equal to j root 2 means this is on the imaginary axis. So at omega is equal to root 2, we are getting the intersection point. So this is the root locus that we now have drawn, right? From -2 towards infinity, towards minus infinity, we have the root locus. From 0 to -1, we have root locus. And when it comes to this point, which is minus 0.422, right? From here, it breaks into the complex plane and it intersects the imaginary axis at k equal to 6 and omega is equal to root 2, right? Plus minus root 2, I will say, because here also it is intersecting, right? So this is how you will have to draw the root locus. The final drawing has to be done freehand, and also you have to take care that the root locus remains symmetric about the real axis. You can see this is the real axis, right? What you have drawn above is the mirror image of what we have at the below the real axis, right? So the root locus is actually symmetric about the real axis, right? You can see here. Okay, now do you have any questions regarding this? What we have done, what we have drawn. Remember, this graph has to be drawn on normal graph paper. Okay, normal graph paper. What does it mean? Normal graph paper means linear graph paper. Both the scales, x as well as y axis scales, are linear. Okay, the standard graph paper will say. Why I have been talking about this multiple times is because when you go into the frequency domain analysis and talk about Bode plots, at that time we are going to use Semilog paper. Okay, and many times people get confused and they start drawing root locus also on the Semilog paper. Okay, so you have any questions regarding this? You can ask. Okay, now one thing is, let's say you have a problem, you have been given a problem and you solve this root locus, and I hope that it is taken from a unsolved example. So how to check whether your answer is correct or not? So for that, as I talked in our last lecture also, I'm going to show you the software called Octave. Okay, using Octave software, you can directly plot these. In fact, all the graphs that I have been showing you, a lot of these graphs have been drawn using Octave. So let's see what happens, how this root locus problem is solved using Octave. So on this slide, you can take a photo of this also, screenshot. So here is the program for the or the Octave code for this particular problem, and this is the outcome or the output of this program. The meeting will end, you just rejoin, and I will show you this live in Octave. I'm going to open Octave and show you it there. Okay, so just rejoin the meeting. Okay. Okay, so we were on this slide, and this is the Octave code that I have shown you, and the output is plotted on this graph. You can see the graph is exactly what we discussed a while ago, right? We were talking about the graph, and that is what actually we have seen it. Now I'll just go quickly through the code one line by line. How many of you know MATLAB? How many of you know MATLAB or have used MATLAB sometimes somewhere in during your course, earlier courses? Anyone? No one? Okay. Okay, so let me just briefly talk about MATLAB. MATLAB is a short form or an abbreviation of Matrix Laboratory. It is a very widely used software in academics as well as in research and in not a lot in industry, but it is mostly used for research purposes and analysis purposes. It is very nice software for quick prototyping. However, the drawback is MATLAB is very, very costly, and it is also very heavy. Means if you try to install the latest version of MATLAB on any computer, then you will need at least 8 GB of RAM for installing, for proper working of that software. So there is an open source alternative to that, which is called Octave. This is not 100% compatible, but a lot of regular tasks, and most importantly, all our control system programs which are written in MATLAB can be run in Octave also. Okay, for example, the program that you are seeing here on the screen, this is, except for this first line, the rest of the program will run directly in MATLAB also. Okay, Octave, as it is a MATLAB replacement or MATLAB alternative, it is very nice for numerical calculations, and it has a lot of functions inbuilt into it. And for particularly control system analysis, there is a toolbox called control system toolbox. In Octave, it is called package, and with the first line, we are loading that package. Okay, pkg load control. So with this line, that control system toolbox package is loaded into the Octave environment, so that we can use control system commands into our further program. The line number 2 is num is equal to square bracket 1. Okay, and then equal to square bracket 1 space 3 space 2 space 0. Now what these two commands are, they are actually specifying the coefficients of polynomials. Okay, these three lines actually are used for defining our transfer function. Now, as transfer function is a ratio of two polynomials, numerator polynomial and denominator polynomial. So using these two lines here and the third line, the line number 2 and 3, we are defining the coefficients of numerator and denominator polynomial. And then the line number 4 makes it or converts that into a transfer function system or transfer function model. Now, how we are defining the coefficients? For that, we have to follow the standard representation of polynomials or of the numerator and denominator polynomials. How? Let's say a n or m. Numerator is m. We will take am s raised to m plus am minus 1 s raised to m minus 1, right? Plus we will continue until plus a1 s raised to 1 plus a0 equal to, there is no need to have equal to, okay? And in the denominator, similarly, we will have a n s raised to n plus a n minus 1 s raised to n minus 1, and likewise we will go up to or instead of a, we will take b here in the denominator, b. Okay, that would be better for us. bn minus 1. Here it will be b1. Okay, b1s plus b0. Okay, so this will be the representation of the transfer function, whichever is given, the open loop transfer function. Remember, these are the coefficients of open loop transfer function polynomials. So we have to provide them the values of this polynomial, means the values of these coefficients only, am minus 1, am minus 2, up to a1, a0. Likewise, we have to provide. If there is some coefficient missing, for example, if there is a term like this, 2s raised to 4 plus 3s squared plus 1. If the polynomial is like this, then how do you take the coefficients? We have to take 2, then 0, then 3, then again 0, then 1. Why is it like this? Because 2 is the coefficient of s raised to 4. 3 is the coefficient of s raised to 2. 1 is coefficient of s raised to 0. Right? Right? Here it is s raised to 0. S raised to 0 means 1. Okay. There are no terms of s cube, means the coefficient is 0. 0 into s cube is 0. Similarly, there is no coefficient of s raised to 1. But for Octave or even for MATLAB, you cannot skip just like that. You will have to tell MATLAB that this is a fourth order polynomial. You can say 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's why it is a fourth order polynomial. If you just say 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, if you just provide coefficients like this, what it will think? It will just think that it is a second order polynomial, right? And the polynomial that it will create is 2s square plus 3s plus 1. So our problem will be different in that case. Okay, so using our equation, we have I have given here numerator polynomial coefficient is 1, denominator polynomial coefficients are 1, 3, 2, 0. Then using this command, this is the command is TF. It is for transfer function, it for creating a transfer function from numerator and denominator polynomial coefficients. Okay. Then the element k, that is our variable k, which we are varying from 0 to 20. Theoretically, we say k is varied from 0 to infinity, but we don't really need to calculate up to infinity. We just get a shape, and after that it is just going to follow the asymptotes, right? I will show you this on graph also after a while. actually plotting and actually changing this things. Then this figure word, this is just going to create a new figure, and on that figure we are going to plot root locus using the command rlocus bracket sys. This is the sys, this is the transfer function that we have created. So that is that is it. That is what the program is. Very simple, very small program. Okay, and in Octave we write that program. Okay, this is, you can see the program is written here. It is saved using some standard naming convention, whatever you have known for naming a file. How do you name a file? You use all those conventions for in C. You have studied that the file should not have any special character except underscore. It cannot start with a number, it cannot have spaces in between. So all those naming conventions are here also. So this is the file I have just given name to, root underscore locus underscore sample dot m. Dot m stands for the extension. It is still using the MATLAB extension. Dot m is the standard extension for MATLAB program. Okay, now I'm going to run this and you will see that the root locus of this particular system will get plotted. Okay, so you can see this is the diagram that I have just shown you. It has been plotted here. Okay, now this program we can change. First, let's change the value of k. Instead of only up to 20, let me run this and plot up to 40. So what has changed? This was the first graph and now this is the second graph. Here in the figure 1, the value of k was up to 20, and in graph 2 the value of k is up to 40. So basically you can see that when you are also going to plot root locus, you have to just show the basic intersection points, because after some points we have these asymptotes along which the root locus is going to get extended. So ultimately there is not going to be any difference even if you change the value of k. Okay, now let me change the value of the function itself, right? Let's, instead of 1320, I will increase the order. Okay, I will introduce one more element here, 13220. Just randomly I have increased the order, right? I have increased the order, right? I have made this now 5th order system. Let's see what happens to the root locus. It has changed a lot, right? But more importantly, what you can see is, as I talked in the beginning, the plane gets divided into 4 sections, and the angles, the angle of asymptotes you can see are now 45 minus 45 and 135 minus 135, right? So this is how you can see. Okay, I will not I will not close that figure. Now, since I increased, let me decrease the order also and show you what happens there. Now, obviously, this has got very simple root locus, but it is not really going to happen. But still, you can see these are the poles. Okay, the whatever is shown in the by red cross here, these are the 2 poles. Okay, 0 and -3. So the root locus started from this end, came at up to -1.5 and then went into the complex plane. So you can see that these are actually the asymptotes, plus minus 90 degrees, right? So you can see when n minus m is 2. There are two asymptotes, and when there are two asymptotes, they are 90 degrees, plus minus 90 degree. I mean, when there become 3, the plane itself actually is getting divided into 3 parts. When that number becomes 4, the plane gets divided into 4 parts. Likewise, you can see and plot and check everything on the graphs. Okay, so now this program you have with you. I have told you what software I'm using or I have used for plotting this and analyzing this software, this thing. So I now suggest you go when you all those whoever have the is it for whoever is possible, you install the software Octave. It is free software. You just download it from internet freely, install it, and try these different problems and see if whatever you draw on the paper is correct, is correctly drawn on, is correct by verifying it on Octave. Okay, so we will stop here. All of you put your attendance, and if you have questions, you can ask even about Octave or whatever we have seen today. If you have any questions, you can ask. Put your attendance in the chat box. Okay. Any questions? Okay, so I guess there are no questions. So here we have completed our 3 units. Okay. Next, in the next lecture, we will start with our 4th unit. We will talk about the frequency response analysis. Meanwhile, I suggest that you must try to solve problems on root locus as well as whatever problems we have seen earlier, because without solving these problems, you will not get the idea behind how to draw these, how to calculate these. All these things are complicated. It is not, well, it is not really difficult to find out root locus. It is only cumbersome. It takes time. There are a lot of steps. You have to go step by step only. You cannot skip any step. So that's why it becomes lengthy. Okay, but it will be good if you practice. You will have to practice anyway. Okay, and yeah, so if you at all get any other questions afterwards also, you can put on our WhatsApp group. Okay, so I will end here and see you in the next lecture for our next unit. Okay, so till then, goodbye.